ready to start the new year?
Yes.
Good. Well, welcome to the work session for the City of Franklin, Board Mayor and Alderman, January the 9th, 2018. And so we're going to start out with opportunity for citizens to make comments for items that are not on the agenda. I have no speaker cards. I see very few citizens. So we'll move on to item number 1, which is a presentation of the 2017 fourth quarter and annual building activity report. You want to add anything, Eric, or you want Lynn to just dive in?
Lynn Oslin is with us, our development services analyst, and this is something we try to do about every quarter to give you a sense of what's coming through the pipeline in terms of permitted development. And Lynn will take us through fourth quarter of 17 and year end or year totals for 2017. Take it away, Lynn.
Thank you. Well, I enjoy doing it after a full year, because I have lots of fun items to include on this that aren't actually on the report. But as you can see, we had a great fourth quarter. Our total investment in the community, or valuation on our building permits for the entire year, was $818,988,000. That's an almost 6% increase over the investment in our community last year, which was $774 million. What I wanted to share with you are some facts about other items like single-family residences. We issued building permits for 565 units last year. The average heated square footage was 3,415 square feet, which was up from 2016, which was 3,158 square feet, and 110 townhomes and 920 multifamily units. We issued building permits for 5 hotels for a total of 694 rooms. We issued building permits for 14 office buildings for total square footage of 1,835 square feet, compared to 2016, where the total square footage was 781,000 square feet. Would you like any additional information as far as what is on the report?
Could you go back to you gave the number of single-family, what was that number?
The number of single-family building permits for 2017 was 565. And compared to 2016 was 722.
But the other thing is the multifamily. I mean, you know, the single-family detached was about a third, and the multifamily was 900 and something.
920, and
Yeah,
what
sure.
was the multifamily last year?
You know, I didn't bring that figure
Oh,
with
that's
me.
okay.
It was less.
For the multifamily?
In 2016, it was less. I don't have the figure
For
with me.
multifamily.
Yes,
So it's really flipped.
correct.
So, yeah, so
Yeah,
you got
we
more
flipped
for
it.
multifamily this year, yeah.
My comment is, you know, in talking about the character of Franklin, you know, having a great number more multifamily, and I mean, it's getting, you know, we've looked at single-family detached is less than 60% now. And I mean, for years, it was more than 70%, many years. More than, single-family detached was more than 70%, and now it's less than 60%. And I mean, if you're talking about character of the city, there is a difference there.
Yeah.
On the hotel, Mr. Mayor, are those in the pipeline with,
Correct.
they're not all
The
fin-
building,
completed?
no,
Permitted, though.
that's
Permitted, so
correct.
they're moving.
There was one completed last year that wasn't included in these 5 hotels, and it was 133 rooms in Berry Farms.
Okay.
Other comments or
A
questions?
couple of quick observations I would just share. When you combine 16 and 17, I don't know that we've ever had a 2-year span like that in terms of the type of
Yeah.
investment. Just a tick under $1.6 billion of permitted development in 2 years. The office development just under 2.6 million square feet of office developed in, or permitted in a 2-year span, which is also significant. The other observation I will make to you on the development services side is, while we have seen a historical amount of development come through the process, we've managed to continue to improve our service level. We have nearly 80% of items coming through the development process and going to our one-stop. So we're finding ways to still provide high-quality service, maintain high standards, but we are continually striving to be more responsive, provide more consistent, helpful guidance to folks as they're going through our development process. And that's both individual citizens all the way up to the folks building these large office buildings, that we strive to provide a high level of service that helps support delivering high quality development as well. So I think that's a compliment to our team, that even in the midst of unprecedented volume, they're continuing to push for high quality service and better continuing to improve service.
And if you mentioned One Stop, we reviewed 1,268 plans last year, from building permits to development plans, rezoning, anything that comes through our development services that we accept at One Stop. And that meets twice a week for building permits, every week, and for development types of plans, that meets twice a month, every month.
So putting that process in place has significantly helped and moved the permitting
Correct.
and getting projects.
And it's also helped us bridge we used to have a real gap between, say, a planning commission approval and permit and activity out on a site, because we'd have all these post-planning commission, things that needed to be met, resolved before they could go ahead and move forward. The One Stop has helped us move out of that mode where there'd be an approval, but you couldn't get up and going or on the site for months because of unresolved issues. This helps us drive through those, take care of them literally at that one, coming in and resolving it with the various different disciplines on their development services side. And so it's getting questions answered, resolved, and moving forward.
What kind of feedback are we getting from our public that come in for this service? Or are we capturing any feedback like, wow, gee, this was great, I was able to get in and get out? And are we hearing anything, or it's just expected?
Personally, I have heard some more on the building permit side, where people say that they'll go to Metro Nashville and sit all day long and not have anyone take a look at their permit application, whether it could be reviewed on the spot or having to be taken in. Whereas if they come to our One Stop, we will at least take a look at their building permit and go from there.
And we,
Excuse
Go
me.
ahead, I'm done.
Oh, I'm,
I just want to make sure that we are capturing this added value.
the
that we
other
didn't
thing we've
have.
done is we will debrief with projects at the end and talk to them about our process and lessons learned or anything. And we are consistently hearing positive feedback about getting answers, being able to, get resolution on issues. And, they're not always perfect.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are hitches in the process, but by and large, we're able to resolve them quickly, give good answers, follow through, and get people moving. And that process has helped us do that better, along with just what happens out on the inspection side of the house as well.
Great.
well, now, that's good on our part, but the last report that we heard, it wasn't going very well, because we had 35% of the applications were not ready.
Correct. Correct. And
Has-
Vernon and I are taking a look at that and are working with the applicants to find out why they're resubmitting before their plans are ready, and trying to work on that
Are you
as
finding
well.
out?
We are, some. A lot of the times, it's the applicants and the developers, or I should say the owners, are pushing them to resubmit before their plans are actually ready.
And we're seeing issues with availability of workforce and quality of workforce.
Yeah.
And sometimes that drives the issues we're seeing on inspections and failures and need to re-inspect and those sort of issues. And we're trying to help be transparent and show folks their performance. Because it's a waste of time and money for both the contractor and the development side, but also for us in terms of the workload our folks have. So we're trying to share that openly, and so people understand how that impacts negatively the process for both the developer and the city.
And we recently sat down with a group with a project and who had 2 or 3 failures and had a pretty thorough discussion about it. It was good feedback on both sides. So, which brings us maybe to number 2.
Yes.
Which is the draft ordinance 2017-54, an ordinance to create Title II, Chapter 2 of the City of Franklin Municipal Code relating to the creation of a Development Services Advisory Commission.
Vernon, you want to?
Great report, by the way, Lynn.
Hey, before you
Yeah,
start
very good,
that,
Lynn.
can I ask Lynn?
Sure.
Richardson? What was your multifamily for, what, I was just looking on, here. What was your
920.
full total?
For 2017, it was 920 units.
920
Yes,
for 2000?
2017, and I did not bring the figure for
Yeah, but it-
2016, but it was less.
It was less in 2016.
Yes,
Okay, so,
Less than 2,000.
it was less in 2016.
yeah, less than the,
Less
ni-
than
less than
Yes.
920. Got it.
Correct.
Sorry. Okay, I hadn't written that down. Thank you.
Sure.
And about roughly 2/3 or a little more of that total development is non-residential or commercial development.
is
So when
non-
you look at that, that 800 and, just under 819
Multifamily?
million,
I'm talking multifamily.
I'm talking about overall.
Oh, okay.
When you look at those dollars, I'm
Alright.
kind of moving to a
Alright.
side light there.
Alright.
Just when you look at that and you look at the
Overall.
non-residential valuation of construction, it's 65, 70%, somewhere in that range of that total number is on the non-residential or commercial side. When we talk about school funding, that is an important element. It gets valued at 40% as opposed to 25% on the residential side. So it helps contribute a greater share to schools and to property tax overall. So that's just something to always keep in mind in terms of how our development pattern works and how it maybe helps pay for services that are top of mind
Good.
as we look at things today. So.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, you're up, Vernon.
Oh, well,
Thank
thank you, and Happy New Year to those of you I haven't had a chance to wish that to thus far. And thank you for being interested in what we accomplish as far as our development services, and that leads us to this discussion. And Lynn is gonna offer you some additional insight because she's done the lion's share of the research. But what we just talked about, you just asked some questions about our development services, has to do all the way from how our team works with design professionals, property owners, and developers that are contemplating a process, all the way through preparing a development, site plan, plats, and all the drawings and applications, building permit applications, the building plans, all the way to getting out on the site, obtaining and receiving inspections for the building, electrical, plumbing, and heating, stormwater, sanitary sewer and water, the streets and landscaping, and other things as well. And this Development Service Commission is intended to provide us guidance and you recommendations on how we can make effective use of our time and talents. What we're seeing is with the software that we've implemented, we're able to track the success rate of design professionals and builders. We know how many inspections pass or fail for every builder, and we know how design professionals submit plans and how thorough they are when they submit plans. And as Lynn mentioned to you previously, we contact them to see what do we need to do better to ensure that the investment a property owner, a developer, a citizen is making can be value added and they can make their investment. So I want Lynn to take a second to share with you some of the reasons and purposes of your consideration of appointing a Development Services Advisory Commission, and then I'll add some more too. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I took a look at several communities that are experiencing lots of growth and success, and they have Development Services Advisory Commissions or something by another name, but very similar to what we are proposing. I took a look at Mecklenburg County or Charlotte, North Carolina, Portland, Oregon, and Gwinnett County, Georgia. We're looking at adding a Development Services Advisory Commission to provide guidance and recommendations to us in areas that are already impacted by the increased rate of growth and investment, as you just heard. We would like to maintain our current level of service for inspections, plan reviews, et cetera. And we're already experiencing challenges with our plan submittals. As I had mentioned earlier, we have plan submittals that are often submitted deficient, and we have to review them multiple times for oftentimes the same types of items. And also, we have an inspection failure rate that's concerning among some of the contractors that have the most inspections, in the 30 to 50% failure rate. So we propose that we have this committee that can provide us with some recommendations, and we can use that information to implement these things within the city.
Thank you, Lynn. It's a large part, it's a workforce issue, particularly in the trades. And what we have found is that raising our fees, our inspection fees, our permit fees, those fees that cover our services, is not the answer. It's just going to increase costs. The concern that we're starting to see, and as Lynn mentioned, looking at other communities, if there are contractors, and there are, I shouldn't say if, that have low pass rates, and I'm talking 50%, 60%, even 70%, that means that when one of our citizens or business owners calls somebody out for somebody to do work, they're really relying on city staff to ensure a value-added installation if they need and obtain a permit. So whether or not the city's involved, we believe that we need to really look critically at how we provide our services and maybe help contractors and the community build a workforce. And that's complicated, but we do want to get people that have a vested interest from the Board of Realtors, from different professional trade organizations, from the chamber, somebody from the utilities, a Board of Mayor and Aldermen would be appointed to the commission, to help us vet the different types of strategies that we're seeing being considered by other jurisdictions.
So, a couple of questions, I think. What's the agenda look like, number one? Is it something you feel would be short tenured because you would almost take care of the issues after a certain amount of time? And how often do you foresee it meeting?
Well, as you know, we've been, since I've been with Franklin close to 11 years, we've had established a development design professionals and developer group that had meets the first Wednesday of the month when we have topics, and generally that's the majority of the year. We would propose that we would have this Development Services Advisory Commission meet every other month, and then have the larger group of design professionals that is topic-based meet on the off months. So we would still have development professionals and design professionals engaged, but we'd have this commission to look more critically at the services we provide. And I want to emphasize that. It's not the policies and regulations that are approved with our comprehensive plans and the Plan Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen as far as our municipal code and zoning ordinance. This is all about the services. And many of you have seen the 2 8-foot banners that are outside the Building and Neighborhood Services Department. They talk about our level of service. When you submit a certain type of application, we'll review it first in, first out as quickly as possible, but within this amount of time, and we're committed to that, and our team takes that very seriously. So we're doing our part to review plans and ensure what's achieved in our built environment functions as far as sewer and water, stormwater, and the buildings look great and contribute to the quality of life in our community. What we need help with is how do we deal with contractors that require a lot of oversight to ensure they're making quality installations. Design professionals that are submitting plans that can be reviewed the first time instead of 2 or 3 times.
Alderman Bransford, then I'll get Alderman Martin.
I just, looking at your membership, recommended membership list here, I'm really not seeing anyone from education and training and technical schools. I hear the underlying issue in my mind with some of this is a skilled workforce. If you go to a site and you do not have the skill set on that site, then we're gonna see this issue. We're gonna see those fail rates. So somehow, I would like to see us embrace technical training and these people that's out there training these plumbers and these high schoolers and these electricians, apprenticeship programs and things. I think we need to get that, otherwise we are importing workers because they can't live here, we know that, right? We are importing workers, I had to get that in. We're importing workers from who knows where when we can perhaps be looking at trying to home grow a technical workforce of, these are good jobs. We're gonna continue to grow. So there's great opportunity here. So I don't know how we kind of mesh that. Just want to throw that out for you and the staff to be thinking about. Because if there's programs through Columbia State or Nashville State or whatever that they are producing carpenters, I mean, people that can know how to square a 2x4 or whatever, so that when they get inspected, it's not, the beam doesn't have to be replaced. So that's just my comments.
Alderman Martin.
I just don't know what you mean by the commission would help build a workforce. What do you mean by that?
Well, not help build the workforce. What I mean is that the commission will help us understand what they're seeing from a different perspective, because, and these are representative groups. They're not, we wrote this specifically that we want to get a cross-section of engaged professionals, as Alderman Bransford said, from the technical school too, that can help us understand the challenges that builders and developers are facing in building our community. It's complicated. It's if the technical schools, for example, can help us understand and can provide training programs for the skilled trades, for engineering technicians, surveyors, we need to have them engaged to see how we can foster and advocate for getting more participation in those programs. On the same token, we need to understand closely what are the challenges that builders are facing besides just taking on too much work and not having enough people to do the work. And there's a cost to that. I would say, and this very preliminarily, based on what we have 12 building-related inspectors in our Building and Neighborhood Services Department. With the failure rate that we have, 3 3 to 4 of those inspectors come to work every day to make re-inspections based on the failure rate. That's just building, that's not the street team, that's not our sewer and water team, our stormwater team, our landscape team. So you can see how that's beginning to impact us. And raising fees just to hire more people to make re-inspections is not the answer. So with Lynn's work in looking at these other communities that are high growth area, they've come up with some strategies, provides perhaps some education programs to provide incentives for participating in educational types of programs. But we want those to be vetted and with those that are closely involved with the program, with building our community to help us vet those out.
And that's one issue. I think Lynn and Vernon are using that as an example. The primary purpose of this is not just about looking at how we can improve the workforce, and that's one area we might hone in on because it's a current topic where we're seeing issues. But it's really to look at the process overall, how we make sure that we're consistently applying regulations, that we're responsive, that we're getting through the process, any issues that are hindering the process either on the city side or on the private side, that we identify it, work on it, part of what Lynn brings to the table for us is this ability to break down the process and analyze what's working and what's not. And so you use this advisory commission to help be a sounding board about dealing with what's not or ideas on how we improve.
But again,
So-
how's that agenda generated? That was my first question. I don't feel like I ever got.
It's really generated by what's happening in the development process and what we analyze there. I mean, it's going to be things that may come from a staff side. It may be an issue that the board is working on that you want to get feedback from the professionals on the development side. It may be something the planning commission is working on that they could benefit from additional feedback from a group of professionals in that realm.
Is there a way to engage the staff beyond yourself, Vernon and Lynn? I mean, so that the inspectors where the rubber meets the road are able to kind of listen and fleece from the conversations, you know what I mean? Instead of it being interpreted sometimes, maybe watch the video, I guess, is another great way, but so that there's some real fruit from something like that.
You're talking about feedback from
From the people that are
customers
working in that
specifically.
department.
I'll get-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all part of this. It would be easy for us to come up and say, this is what we think needs to happen. But the investment is being made by citizens, by property owners, by businesses. And we want to make sure that they're, to the extent possible, those people that are serving them are providing input too. There's a variety of development services, as Eric alluded to, that need some thoughtful discussion. And during the design professionals meeting every month, we can't drill down into them as much because we're talking bigger issues. And some of them are more policy related that eventually end up to the Planning Commission and Board of Mayor and Aldermen regarding development patterns and such. But this is all related to our services, how we interact, how we keep going forward, and address what data is showing us is an increasing concern of a lack of a qualified workforce.
I'm not, give me an example. I know you had somebody else, I'm sorry.
Well,
That's a good question.
let me
Yeah.
help with some clarification.
Yeah,
I'm
please.
gonna call on Alderman Berger. You know, our process,
Okay.
Yeah.
a few years ago, there was a lot of coffee talk about it. There was a lot of people were unhappy that, you know, Franklin was a hard place to do business. And I think that through a lot of the work with Vernon and staff, that our process has improved greatly. And that's why One Stop is here now and why it's doing that. And we're conceptually, I would hope that this group would be able to help look at our process internally as it functions and figure out ways that we could streamline it, make it more predictable, make it faster, because the developers want to get their projects to the market because they're paying money. It's costly to them. So if there are ways that we can improve our processes, I think this group could help that. Certainly it is a concern with these re-inspections and resubmittals and things like that we're seeing. And certainly a little peer pressure there from other design professionals could also help maybe change some of those attitudes. and
Example
refocus them.
might be a few years ago, we went through the process of looking at outside plan review for larger projects, so that it would free up our staff to work with individual citizens and smaller projects that might need a little more direct assistance.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of thing that changed how we routed certain types of projects in our process, and what we assigned staff reviewers to, and what we gave people options to use outside reviewers, that they could maybe control their destiny a little more directly in terms of schedule. And if they wanted to expedite that with a reviewer, they could pay an outside entity to help do that for them. So that's a way of looking at the process. Excuse me?
How's that working?
I think it's working pretty well. Vernon could give you
It works very well because the requirement that we've adopted is that for buildings that are greater than 10,000 square feet, that the applicant needs to secure the services of a third-party plan reviewer. And we've pre-qualified a handful of plan reviewers, so they select the one that they want to use, and they can negotiate with them how fast they want those plans reviewed. When the plans are completed, our team gives them a cursory review, but then is able to issue the permit very quickly. That works very well. And as Eric mentioned, the reason we did that is because it allows our staff, who otherwise would have to sit in a room and focus on some of these larger buildings uninterrupted, makes them available to citizens that walk into the Building and Neighborhood Services Department or into City Hall, and they're available to talk to them the majority of the time. And that might be the only time they come in to the city.
A lot of these questions that we've been talking about, I've had written down here, but like Margaret's, how do they obtain the information? How do they function? So when you talk, have you talked to these people at all in Gwinnett or Charlotte personally?
We have talked, yes, in Charlotte, we've talked to them several times.
Okay. So my question would be, and let me just go through some of these. I said, how do they obtain the if we had a commission, how does that commission obtain the information? Then how do they function? Do they meet? Do they have agendas? Do they go and obtain the information together as a group? How do they function? How does the Gwinnett people, how do they function, or the Charlotte people function? Then we talked about, the workforce. I mean, we can't develop the workforce, and that's not our job, and we don't want to go there. But is there a place for us to be helpful, or is there something we can do that helps other people develop their workforce, and what would that role be? I don't know. But I'm very curious in North Carolina and Georgia how they function. And so bottom line is we need to perfect a system that's clear, predictable, timely, because time is money. Like Eric was just talking about, time is money. And predicting, we need to keep perfecting a process that is all three of those, clear, predictable, and timely. Because if unfortunately, every government's a bureaucracy, whether we want to be or not. But if we look at ourselves versus corporate America, if I was working for a company and it was my job to provide, my job is on the line to provide this service or to streamline this, I would be doing it in corporate America because time is money, this is my job, but yet sometimes in bureaucracies, the buy-in is less because there is not a monetary, connection there like it is in corporate America. So that's the difference in the rub between government and corporate America. So I would say, bottom line for this commission, I want to know how these people function. How did they make that commission function to obtain the information? How do they actually get the information they need? And then how do they disseminate it and filter it back out to where it's going to be usable to us? So I'm just unclear of how that system works as a commission. I mean, I see a need for it. I think I hear what you're saying, but I think I'm still confused about
What we
not
would
seeing
do-
a model.
Well, and thank you, and, I apologize if I've commused about the workforce issue. The reality, to say it not as kindly perhaps, is that people need to take responsibility for their work, just like we are as well. And what we want to do, and you're right, you said it very well, Alderman Berger, perfecting the process. And we have one view of it, and I've often said this, is that from the city standpoint, because of the amount of development which we have here, we get the opportunity to work with a lot of design professionals, a lot of builders, and see how they work. Well, a lot of the design professionals and builders also have work in other jurisdictions, and we can learn from them how they work. And that's something that we constantly do, is what can we do better? And this group, we have a list. If we sat down with the commission, I can assure you, that based on what the data we're collecting, talking to our team, the design professionals, we have a list of development services related topics to discuss and to talk about how we can maybe improve them and get their input. Also include the financial implications of a new system or a new process, a tweak to the process. Those are things that we want to engage the people that we're working with to help us vet. And again, meeting 6 times a year for an hour and a half a month, we believe that we'll be able to improve upon what we've already established to date. We still want to be thorough in ensuring the plans and buildings that we review and inspect are meeting the standards that we've adopted, whether it's our zoning ordinance, our development standards, our building codes, our street standards, stormwater, whatever they may be. But we want to be able to do that efficiently as we continue to grow. And as Eric mentioned, even though in the last 2 years, we've now realized over $1.5 billion of investment in a community of 70,000, we've added little staff. And that's a compliment to our team to look critically at how we do business and work with design professionals. We want to take it to the next level.
Vernon, after you said that, so if this commission's going to meet like an hour and a half every 2 months, which I don't think is enough, I would think you'd want to have a 2.5-hour meeting or something, and then you're doing that 6 times a year, then what happens after that? Where do they go? Do they work together as a group? How do they go? You can come back with us later on this. How do they obtain the information? And then, you know, just like your design professionals, they brought to you a long time ago this one-stop shop thing that they were talking to you about a couple years back, I guess it was. And they said, hey, we go down in Nashville, they have a one-stop shop kind of thing where they can go through, or they go to another community and do that. When we started looking at that, you all did that very well and have implemented that. So those are the kinds of things I think we would look at, along with everything else that you've mentioned. But I think we have to look at this saying, how do they function? I want some methodology. I want to know what that model looks like. If you could bring back some kind of model or flow chart to show us how they function, because I think it's sort of nebulous to me of how they, sure they meet, but what happens afterwards.
It's pretty consistent with, you have other commissions that function in the city. You have the Battlefield Commission, you have,
Yeah,
you know, Sustainability Commission, you have these different groups, and they bring a certain, and they're, like this is proposed to be, it's a variety of different people from different disciplines, different professional backgrounds and expertise. So they donate their time, basically, to the city to bring those perspectives to the table and help us work through various issues. To me, this is really a kind of a logical evolution of what Vernon has helped spearhead over the last 10 years, which has been the design professionals group and the developer group. And that's a little less formal. It's come, go. And sometimes we have a lot of people, sometimes we don't have as many people. The topics are wide ranging. And that's going to continue on those off months so that we're still welcoming anybody who wants to come to the table to come to the table. But this takes 9 to 11 people, 11 total, I guess, including the board representative, et cetera, and puts a little more structure to it, a little more formality, maybe a little more accountability about being there every other month to help provide that insight. But at the end of the day, it is an advisory group. We bring information to them that we think we could benefit from, or the community could benefit from the feedback of this group and their expertise. And so that's ideas you may have at the board level. It's ideas staff may see, especially with the capability that we now have to break down the process more and get data and say, hey, here's a trend we're seeing in our process. Help us with insights on that. It may be a specific update on impact fees or those kind of things. So it's anything that's in the policy realm of development services that we might want feedback, the planning commission might want feedback, the board, the board's going to may want to get some input on the policy you're ultimately making, but it's ultimately going to help provide feedback and guidance into the process. And so it's a lot of it is determined by what we see out there and what we want to get help on.
And then it's going to be up to that commission to
That commission
go
and
after
you,
that
all of you,
information.
and our staff and
But it's gonna
the
be up to
planning
them to get
commission to
that
say, hey,
information.
let's have them give us input. Yeah.
I got Alderman Martin and then Alderman Peters.
I'm not sure, how many of you in this room were here several years ago when we had committees appointed to advise? Well, it turned out to be a huge mess, because not only were they advising, but they were more in control than this board could accept, because we're the elected officials. We have to stand behind what's done. And all of these committees were giving their input, more than that, really advising us what to do. And it was a mess and was terminated. Now, I think if this may work, but I think we're gonna have to be very careful that it doesn't step over the boundary into what this board is responsible for, because we're the ones that have to deal with it and answer for it. Is this just a group to receive and get information, or are they going to try to tell us what to do about it? See, it's very cloudy to me. Seeing what happened before and seeing the more advisory committees come in, I just don't know. I don't know how good it would be.
Could I speak to that, piggyback off of what she said? Because, Margaret, I hear what you're saying, but those committees actually met, like the CIP and the budget, they were part of those committees. And they had a vote whether to send it on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. That was the difference. They had voting power within the committee to either send something forward or not. I think that was where the rub was, because the people in the community were saying, wait a minute, we elected you to make those decisions to send it forward to the full board or whatever. So I think that's where the rub comes in. And a commission, just like sustainability, they do all the legwork and the research and the work, and then along with staff helping them. So I'm seeing that this will probably be a joint effort. And then you bring these good things to us and say, or these issues, and say, okay, Board of Mayor and Aldermen, here's what we found out, and you present the information, and then we take it from there and say, what do we want to do about it, correct? All right.
Alderman Peters.
Well, as Alderman Blanton said, it sounds like, on the great side, that they would kind of take care of a lot of problems and then kind of go out of you know, go out because all their work was done. So I guess a question that I would have is, what would be the track record of the ones that, you know, you have been following, or I know that you sent these out to me. The only one I got to look at was Gwinnett County, and only very briefly on that. But I'd like to know, what have they been able to do, and what have they accomplished? What have they worked on even? You know, I think that would be something that I would be interested in before I would, you know, I would be wanting to know more about that. Another thing is that whenever it named all the people, the types of people, the groups that would be represented, if you look, our planning commission has quite a number of people on it that are in one or more of these groups. And so I'm not sure that I quite understand that is it that these people would just be making recommendations based on?
You're suggesting the planning commission take this role on?
No, no, I'm not. But what I'm saying is though, well, wait. Let me put it the other way. There are a lot of citizens in this city that would like to see some things, you know, done differently, and would they have an opportunity to have a little advisory commission of their own to come back and tell us some things that they think we ought to change? I mean, I guess they can by voting, you know, but what I'm saying is that this is a group of people, I guess we would say, that have a vested interest, you know, and that's good and bad. Vested interest in the sense that they want to have some things work better. But then again, I can remember old times whenever a lot of people were just saying, we don't want you to look more carefully at this. We just want you to say yes. I mean, and I can guarantee you that that happens, and happened a great deal here in Franklin. Well,
Since this administration?
I'm not, no. I
That's
would
old
say-
hat.
But still, that was something that happened a great deal, you know. So, as I say, I'd like to find out what, you know, what have been some of the accomplishments of some of committees like this or commissions like this, and also, is there anything in the state of Tennessee that is like this?
I think as far as accomplishments, I think you can look and see what the design professionals and staff have been able to do
Oh,
with
excuse
our
me.
processes already. So this maybe would be something that would be able to bring those processes faster. maybe.
I meant in some of the areas that have
No, I
had a
agree.
commission.
Sure, I
you
think
know,
that's a good
And
suggestion.
because really, the design, you know, I mean, I don't by any means go to half of the design professional meetings, but I do go occasionally. I don't know who else does.
So
you
would
know
it be helpful
anything?
for us to bring some more of a profile of what's happened in some of these other
Yeah.
Yeah,
communities
'cause
as an
it's kind of-
example?
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time on this, so I think you
Yeah. I
might want to
know,
move
I
on
know.
on
Yeah,
your,
'cause I wanna
on your
move on to
agenda,
some
but
other
I
things.
agree.
we can bring that back at the next
Yeah.
meeting or with some
Yeah.
more detail
Yeah.
for
A little
you.
bit more how they function.
Give you some more examples.
A little bit,
Okay, but good idea.
yeah.
Let's
Thank
move
you.
on to the strategic plan for the fire department.
Invite Chief Garzrick and Deputy Chief King up here to talk about this. This has been over a year-long process that our fire department team has engaged in terms of looking at long-term planning and goals for the department, and have created their first ever strategic plan for the fire department. So I'd like the Chief and Deputy Chief to walk you through that, and wanted to just share that with you as an overview. We're not needing or asking you to take a specific action on it, but want you to be informed about the efforts of the department and the focus that they're bringing to key issues in terms of service and how the department works. So take away, Chief.
Thank you, Eric. Many of you have helped us achieve first in the fire department here in Franklin over the years, and I appreciate all your support. This document I am extremely proud of, because we looked throughout our whole organization and said, firefighter at Station 3 at the lowest level, give us some input on how we can improve our department. how can we meet the evolving needs in our community? And we allowed everyone, 100% participation in the organization, to help us develop this document. Then we worked with a consultant, Bob Norton from the Norton Development Group, to guide and facilitate us through that whole process with a core committee of 20 people when we started out with foundations development. And certainly one of the things that came out of that whole foundation development was a communications behavior agreement. We had never really had anything like that in our department. It was the way we were going to treat each other as we move forward as an organization. And out of that thing, there were 12 clear behaviors that we wanted to make sure that we were treating each other. And so that's on page 6 of this document for you. I've never seen that in any other fire department across the nation. And we have that posted in fire administration, all of our fire stations, and our training center. And each person that comes on in our department has to sign that. And we make a big ordeal of it, saying that this is the way you indeed agree to treat your senior staff, your firefighters that you engage with and work with on a daily basis in the fire stations, and also the general public. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of that come to this. And as you know, as a community, we're always having to look at training and professional development to deal with all those emerging initiatives that we come into place, like active shooters, like incident management teams for deployment to major incidents. As you very well are familiar, we have sent teams to Hurricane Harvey, to Jacksonville, Florida, all to work in an environment, and we get rave reviews because we have such high levels of training that we hold ourselves to, and that when we go and perform in those groups, you know, we get a great amount of input back from FEMA and other organizations, the national organizations, response agencies that are out there. They just praise how we function as a team at those particular events nationwide, actually. So I'm not going to steal much of Chief King's thunder here. He was the chief that handled this whole process to see it through, that, you know, I charged with bringing it all the way through from its inception of what we identified the needs as a senior staff to getting all the people involved in our department. So Chief King.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit more about our strategic plan, but we couldn't have done it without Chief and without Bob and without Eric letting this move forward. And I think we as a department recognized that we needed to slow down and plan the next 5 years out. In the fire service, oftentimes we get in a little trap of being reactive because that's what we do, is respond when people call us. But having a plan that we can refer back to is already making a change in our organization on a daily basis. Right now, we're working through our budget process, and the questions are multiple times throughout the day. Where is that in our strategic plan? Did we include that part? Is there anything we left out or forgot? And so those are the short-term things, because we're still in the infancy of practicing this plan, and we know that it's going to modify over time. But we're very, very pleased with it. It hit 5 key areas of our department. From that, we have 19 subcommittees that looked at every single element of our department that we could imagine. We answered difficult questions in that process to say where are our gaps, where are our opportunities to improve. We've included that assessment in this document if you want to look at it, and then we have a plan to either study it more or implement the solution moving forward. And so, again, we're very pleased with all of those things. More than a third of the department participated in the committee work. We have over 60 recommendations that made it into the plan. That's pretty specific, and some of those are short-term needs that we have, and some of those are up to 5 years out. And they're definitely good things that we can discuss and set a great game plan for us in the future. I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments that you may have.
impressive. And whatever, I guess we also should say, you know, our rating is one of the tops in the nation already. And to say, we're not going to stand still, we're going to try to improve, even though we look really good in a lot of ways.
Thank you, Alderman Peterson. You're right. When you're through improving yourself, you're through, is our motto. And,
That's right, exactly. I
and
agree.
so, what will happen from this? We will look at becoming an accredited agency. We'll do our standard of government document, which helps us in how we deploy our resources in our community. And when we achieve accreditation, we will be one of the less than 50 agencies out of 50,000 departments across the nation that is both accredited and an ISO Class 1 fire department. I'll go back to wanting to hear input from the firefighters at every level. I mean, when you got firefighters at stations that are doing YouTube training videos and getting 70,000 hits on them, you want to hear from that firefighter as to how you can improve your training in your organization. And so going to that person and asking him and getting him involved with the training aspects in our whole department. I mean, you can only imagine how he felt that someone was coming and asking him to give some input and direction into where we were going as an organization. So it's been extremely positive, and I am very proud of the document.
Oh, I think it's fantastic.
Alderman Blanton?
I don't think it's any secret I have a sweet spot for my firefighters, but over the last 6 years, it's been really wonderful to watch the growth within the, not that there was ever anything wrong, but to watch the growth with each other and how y'all function together to get the ISO rating. I mean, it's one thing after another. You just keep reaching and reaching. This is just another notch on your belt to show where you are as a team and how you support each other and make sure all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So I just want to say, if it's not wrong, I'm very proud of this for you. So,
Alderman Branchman?
Very impressive document. Thank you. Good work. Probably need to publish this. Your evaluation points. When will you know you are where you never get there, supposedly? What are your check-in points? How would you know you? Yeah. Talk a little bit about that. How will you evaluate this plan?
Yeah, so we had 19 subcommittees, and of those 60 recommendations, each one of those was placed on a Gantt chart, which is near the end of this document. It's much easier to read electronically because you can zoom in. We did recognize that it was very heavily weighted towards the front of the 5-year scale, but we saw that as a good thing in that there was excitement for working on the issues that we identified. And so even if we miss a few of those targets and have to push those back into years 2, 3, and 4, we can deal with that, but we hope that we're identifying the priority issues as we move along, and we think that's happening already. The 3 of the things that came out of this that were really standout issues for us, one was the compensation plan, and as you know, Eric and Kevin Townsell and the fire department and other city staff all work towards the compensation plan, which have already made significant differences, which is also a good motivator to see things happening quickly. Chief mentioned the standard of cover, which is really a self-assessment of what are the risks in our community and how do our resources and training match up to match the hazard. Do we have any problems there? And so that will be a huge component for us. And then finally, policy came out in multiple areas of just remaining current to make sure our policies reflect how we operate, are we doing it safely, and is it consistent?
Great. Good start.
Alderman Berger?
On page 21, you talk about conducting pre-incident plans. I'm very interested in this because it says here, and I'm going to read the sentence, having a pre-incident planning process will ensure we monitor changes to the community and that crews are familiar with most buildings, yielding better services and outcome with the growth that we have in our community and a district that I represent that has a lot of tall buildings, has a lot of commercial, a lot of offices, a lot of people in those buildings. Can you talk about this and how you prepare for it and how you become, I'm very interested in this because you said, and that the crews are familiar with most buildings. Are we? And how do we become most familiar with the new, how to become familiar with the new buildings? And how do you all conduct your crews on that? What's the method?
Well, one of the numbers that I used, and this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, is 25 million square feet of inspectable space. That's important to us when we talk about existing buildings. We know that number continues to grow, especially when we've done $1.5 billion in the last 2 years. Because that's a large number, most departments use a tiered approach and looking at that hazard. Again, a high-rise building may not be that risky because people aren't sleeping in it. It's built of non-combustible construction. It has fire sprinklers and lots of redundancies that keep people safe. Yet we could have a 40-year-old apartment complex that doesn't have sprinklers where, even though it's only 2 stories, it may still be a much higher risk. And we'd rather see our firefighters visit that building than spend time walking through a Nissan North America, for example. That's a challenge for us to get right because there's really not enough to go around. A lot of these buildings are very similar, and so we treat that through training. You don't have to walk in every single building because it's impossible to memorize a floor plan, but yet we understand similar types and the risk and how we're going to do that. But those are all challenges, and that's why it's identified in the report as one of those areas of how do we get our guys out? What is the purpose of that? Is it to learn the building? Is it to find potential violations? What's the goal there? And I'm not sure we've figured that out yet, exactly what we want and are able to do, especially with all the other things that we're faced with.
Okay, and the other question I had then, that incidents where let's talk about not a fire, but maybe an incident, where the fire department and the police would work in tandem. You would handle that. How are you prepared to handle that with the police? Do you have, in your strategic plan here, do you have times that you work with the police department on those kinds of things together where they wouldn't just be responding, the fire department may have to respond, bomb teams or whatever, you know, just let your mind run wild today, it could be anything. And then the other thing is, do we have floor plans of our larger buildings?
Well, as far as the police and fire interaction goes, we know that's happening not only in the city of Franklin, but with our other partners. Dispatch consolidation has helped. We're also working with
Yeah.
EMS because we all have to work together. Just last week, we had a joint command with police with a barricaded subject. And so because it involved multiple disciplines, and even though it was a relatively minor event that most of us didn't hear about, that's a good example of us practicing it on a daily basis. So hopefully hopefully we'll never have a larger incident, but if that does happen, we will have trained doing that. And that's also back to what Chief referenced earlier, the incident management teams. We're practicing in lots of areas of the country, hoping that we don't have a major problem here,
Right.
but if we do, we'll be well trained for that.
And the other one was floor plans for larger buildings.
The floor plans for larger buildings, we capture everything electronically now because we require all of our submittals through IDT. And so they're in the cloud, they're available to us, but the trick is either integrating those into GIS or another format that we can actually push out and then make it in a usable format in the field for our firefighters.
Well, the reason I ask is because if there was an incident that you needed to pull up a floor plan, would you be able to have that ability to do that in a reasonable amount of time?
No, not right now. We do not have that ability.
Do we plan to do that? Is that part of a strategic plan for the fire department to have that at their fingertips in the future? And if so, when?
I would think so. We talk about target hazards frequently, and those would be our highest risk buildings in the community. For example, Williamson Medical Center. just
Exactly.
because of the potential of not being able to move people out and what a big deal that would be, even if they lost power or had any type of emergency. And so having plans for that type building is relatively easy to keep in their fiscal plan, either as a paper copy. We also have fire command rooms, which keep copies of that. But we can also integrate that into our GIS system where it essentially does an overlay and we're able to look at those key floors.
And I was also thinking one of the newest assisted livings down on Royal Oaks, that's a large building and you have people who are elderly in that building. And so if we needed a pole plan up there, would those things be available to us? I think we need to look into that. I'm asking you to put that in the list of things we need to do because I think that may prove to us someday to be valuable if we would need it.
Just one quick.
One quick one.
That's all.
Because we're talking about health here, and you know, we have the EMT training for, you know, everybody, I guess. But what I'm trying to say is, that so often and such a large percentage of our calls are concerning medical emergencies and everything. And so I noticed that there were some big comments about some possible things and everything. But I did want to say also, people may not even know that you also come out on non-emergency calls to aid people who need medical help. So that is something. But you know, maybe even just educating people about all the things that you do could be.
And-
Somewhere around 70% of calls are medical.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, last comment.
yeah, and just on that note, I do, the fire department is at community events and things like that, and I know when we have cleanup day in the neighborhoods, you guys come out and you provide the alarms for the homes and things like that. So thank you so much for what you do for our city.
Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to 4, Resolution 2017-90, resolution to affirm compliance with federal Title VI regulations.
This is an annual process. We commit that we do not discriminate and we comply with federal regulations. In that regard, it's important with various grants and things we do. So we just affirm this every year.
Number 5 is acknowledgement of Amendment 1 to the City of Franklin contract number 2016-0098, the Parkland Acquisition Agreement with Crescent Lockwood LLC.
So one of the things we looked at through 2017, summer 2017, was the opportunity to acquire approximately 77 acres of property just north of the 188 acres we already own. This includes Robinson Lake, and the board had authorized a purchase of that property for $1.5 million, $500,000 payments, 3 annual $500,000 payments from Parkland Dedication. So what we had done in looking at that is went through our due diligence process, identified some concerns about the condition of the dam at Robinson Lake, and some concern also about the depth of Robinson Lake, that it would be as usable as we'd hoped it would be. The board authorized us to do some additional research on that. Also gave me as city administrator authority to work with modifications to that agreement in terms of reducing the payments and adjusting it as might be appropriate. So in early December, we received a more complete report that's attached to your memo here that looked at the condition of the dam and some of the concerns around that. We did reconvene working with Crescent Lockwood, who's the owner, or was the owner of the property, and the folks we'd entered into the agreement to begin with, and essentially negotiated a reduction in that acquisition cost from $1.5 million to $500,000. What we identified is the potential of over $2 million of dam repairs. We believe that can be reduced in a couple ways, specifically looking at some conditions out there, as well as looking at modeling. That is largely driven by the classification the state assigns to it and the potential hazard if the dam would have a complete failure and those kind of things that it might pose to the community. We believe we can do things to address that, make that, improve the dam overall. And also, look at the mitigation through modeling to show that the class of the dam could probably be reduced, that would likely also benefit us and reduce the cost to put the dam in appropriate condition. The other element that's really important about this property is of course, it provides a great potential in terms of passive recreational parkland, but it also provides a great access point to the rest of that property, the 188 acres we already own, part of which will likely be used or potentially used for a future water reclamation facility, but the rest of it, vast majority of it, can be used for fields, et cetera. But the access to that site is best achieved through that 70 acres. And just the value of that access, when you combine land value and potential damages, is well over $1 million right there. So when we look at access, when we look at the recreational benefit of the property, I went ahead and exercised the authority you gave me to go ahead and modify the agreement and reduce the purchase cost by $1 million, but move forward with the acquisition. This is something we think we can build into the improvement plan over time, and that this will long-term be a great asset to the community and to that park space, and really give us somewhere around 260, 250 acres of parkland in an area of the city that we've already identified is greatly in need of it. And so taking that all into account, I made the call to move forward with it. Glad to answer any questions you had, but we wanted to share that with you all publicly since that direction had been given, but that action took place over the end part of last year.
So if the lake wasn't there,
Mm-hmm.
the property's worth more.
Well, I don't know if that's true. It's all in the floodplain, and
No, I'm not
there's a
saying
lot
we
of
do anything with the
limitations,
lake.
but
I'm
yeah.
just saying that with the lake, it's a $500,000.
Well, there are,
But
yeah.
without the lake,
Well,
it's
sure
worth
it would
even.
be.
And that's just
Yeah.
a
That's a
comment.
given.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the $500,000, any of that parkland dedication fees?
It's all parkland dedication. Actually,
Outstanding.
you'd already budgeted in this
Outstanding.
year's budget the $500,000.
You
So
did
we
good.
basically would use what you've already budgeted and basically be free and clear with the acquisition.
You did good.
And the depth of the lake.
Yes.
You addressed the dam, but you did not, I don't think, address the
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
depth of
well,
the
one of
lake.
the things we will look at, and I can't give you a definitive answer on this, is it may be worthwhile as we're doing the dam work. Excuse the.
Go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
You know what I
The
meant,
damn word.
the work on the structure, that it may make sense to do some dredging to help address
Okay.
that depth as well. That'll be something we'll need to evaluate in terms of looking at the project as a whole.
But what would that do to the potential of the flooding if the dam broke? You know, because whenever I look back at this, and I didn't study everything in here, but it showed what would be affected if the dam broke, and it had, what, 6 or 8 of those little map pieces for the city, and where it would be affected, which I find hard to believe.
That's part of what we'll
It's kind of
model,
hard to
and
believe,
looking at that
yeah.
classification, it's basically, there's variation between the grades, but there's 3 grades of classification about the dam. We're in the middle one. We feel that with a little bit of modeling, we can probably show that we're closer to class 1 than class 2. But that's the kind of thing we can look at, but it's got a pretty broad area that could,
Be affected.
with the river and the area that's already in the floodplain, we don't see a significant risk associated with the dam,
So you-
which is a good thing.
So
But
you don't think it would break and wash the square away?
no, it would not.
My old
It
house,
would
my old
certainly
house.
not.
No,
Make
it
it a-
did,
just
no.
make it a splash pool.
But the other thing is, so it was just a farm pond, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It was just a farm pond.
That's,
It
yeah.
was a farm pond. Yeah, Tom Robinson.
we can dredge it.
Stock
We
pond.
might make it a little
Stock
deeper.
pond.
We
Yeah.
can make it a little lake.
All right, we've got,
But anyway,
We
but
need
anyways.
dredging.
Thank you.
all right, we'll move on. We've spent the money.
Yeah,
Item
no.
6 is ordinance 2017-52, being title an ordinance to rezone 188.28 acres from the state residential district to civic and institutional district for the property located east of I-65, west of the Harpeth River,
Yes.
Southeast Municipal Complex, established public hearing dated February 13th. Josh?
Mayor, the reason we wrote them so long is to give me enough time to get from the audience up here.
Good travel time.
I figured that out while I was sitting over there. This is the 188 acre parcel that was previously mentioned under item number 5. Staff and Planning Commission both recommended the item favorably. I'm happy to answer any questions.
We are the owners.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, this is actually what we already own.
Yes.
This is
Yeah.
not the
Right.
new parcel.
Right.
Yeah.
This does not include the new parcel. This is the 188
That we
acres that is
now-
already
we
owned.
already own.
And so you're zoning at civic institutional, which is appropriate for the park
Exactly.
use,
Yeah.
park use and water reclamation use that's envisioned for the future.
Okay, that makes
Okay.
sense. Okay.
Item 7.
Good job.
I'll try to read this one, but give you plenty of time to get back to your seat. Consideration ordinance 2017-48 to be entitled an ordinance to amend chapters 3, 5, and 8 of the zoning ordinance of the city of Franklin to refine transitional features standards for infill development established in public hearing date of February 13th, 2018.
Yes, this text amendment expands the transitional features section of the zoning ordinance and includes separate standards for residential and non-residential infill, particularly focusing on infill in Central Franklin. It has been discussed at several joint conceptual workshops and refined each time and recommended for approval unanimously by the Planning Commission. It also helps implement Envision Franklin, which recommends preserving the character of established neighborhoods through context-responsive lot sizes, lot widths, building heights, and front yard setbacks for those established neighborhoods.
Why didn't you write that down for me to read?
Then I'd have nothing to say.
You'd be even better.
Well, there is a lot to this, though. There's a
Oh,
lot more to
absolutely.
this.
Yeah, we've been at
Go-
the workshops a number of times to hear Alderman Martin.
I think this is great, Kelly and Emily. I think we're a little late with it. I love to ride around town and see the things that would have not been permitted had this been in our ordinance. So I do thank you very much for it, before it's even more too late.
Better late than never.
Well, there's a lot in here and that will affect a lot of areas. You know, it's not just the historic district or anything like that. There's a lot in here, and I still really have some concerns about how much it's, I guess would say, it is determining whether a particular piece of property or house, whether, you know, some of it, honestly, not every building that's been built in Franklin is worth saving forever. That's right. Exactly. I mean, it has, and we've been seeing some things, you know, that were requesting things like this, but also, you know, we're talking about, well, at first it said Central Franklin, which is, you know, kind of inside Mac Hatcher, maybe not down on the southern part of it, but there's some other little pieces too. It's kind of hard to say Central Franklin there, but the other thing is that, as I say, it specifically says in a single-family building permit review, the Planning and Sustainability Department, you know, will be determined whether the transitional features requirement shall apply. And so, in other words, it's not just blocking off by particular location or by particular use or something like that, but it's something that the Planning and Sustainability Department can decide whether to apply this or not.
And that is based on the intensive mapping exercise that was done with Envision Franklin that showed transitional areas and mapped established neighborhoods where a makeup of citizens, design professionals, aldermen, planning commissioners identified neighborhoods that should have that have an established character where there's a character that they would like to see continued over time. And that's what we would look to.
But let me also say, I think I went to every one of those meetings. I guarantee you there were so many things there, and by the time we got to the end of it, there was so much in that thing right there. I'm still finding every day things that I did not know were in there. And I felt like, other than the people who were paid to work on it, I probably knew as much about it as anybody did. And I guarantee you, I don't know. There's a lot on there I don't know. And some of it is like, you know, a few people that met where at the, you know, Eastern Flank building there said, okay, this neighborhood ought to be, this neighborhood ought not to be. I mean, it wasn't like, and I don't want to use this as a bad example, but back whenever we did the other land use plan that came before this, they had meetings in particular areas in the city where they had the people from that area make comments about things. And not to say that that needs to be done all the time, but it was not done in this case. I mean, I don't think that people in my area said, okay, we want everything to look like the houses that are here. And in fact, even in my own subdivision, the houses don't look alike. There's all kinds of differences between 1 story and 2.5 story or 3 story.
But
you know.
one thing I would say is that generally the setbacks are fairly consistent as it was planned out more comprehensively as a subdivision. And that's something we look to in the downtown area as well. We want to make sure that some of those general massing and lot size standards as well as setbacks are consistent. Now, there might be some variation in height, which this transitional feature ordinance allows for, but generally, a lot of those more dimensional standards should be more consistent with what was originally planned.
But as I say, and you know, I'm just saying, if you look at certain blocks, they all seem to kind of fit together and everything. You look at some other blocks, and I mean even downtown, those buildings don't. I mean those residences don't have a commonality. I'll put it that way.
Any other comments or questions? You ready to move on? We'll go on to item number 8, grading permit with the Tennessee Department of Transportation for access from McHatcher Parkway for the water reclamation facility.
As we get ready to do the expansion and upgrade project at the water reclamation facility, this will provide for a right-in, right-out construction entrance off of McHatcher. So that'll lessen the disruption to Franklin High School, to the homes along Hillsborough, and to Chestnut Bend neighborhood. So this is something that is an important component as that project gets ready to move forward.
Is that hard to get? Permit from the state?
Well, it's only temporary. So that helped, and you know, we.
It has a lot of money involved in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so this will help when that time comes to move forward with that project.
Okay, item number 9, consideration of resolution recognizing the voluntary financial contribution and timing of said contribution from Southern Land Company that helped fund and facilitate the design of the northwest quadrant of McHatcher Parkway and the construction of the multi-use path. Any questions about that?
Well, I
one?
thought it was very interesting that all the money that Southern Land was going to do is going to go for the trail.
Yeah, and this is something we, this had been committed to over 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Not necessarily formally, but had been committed to, and we never had really gotten it down in writing until what you see before you. And in the discussion about trying to facilitate McHatcher moving forward, we did offer that this money that would come to the city as a reimbursement for our engineering could go towards the multi-use trail, because otherwise the state was hesitant to do the multi-use trail. They were more focused on the roadway, and we wanted to have both. And this, pledging these dollars helps us keep that in the project.
Great.
All right, will the multi-use trail connect the present multi-use trail to West Haven?
It will follow the path of McHatcher. So there are bike lanes in and around Hillsborough. It will connect to that area. You've got the sidewalks. You've got those other areas. So, and you've got whatever is in West Haven. So I'm not sure what
No,
you're,
all
what
right.
you're
What
referring
The
to.
answer is no.
No,
to
it's
that.
not.
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
You know where it
so
stops right now?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm
On,
sorry.
yeah, just
96.
past, just,
This is one that runs parallel to Mac Hatcher Northwest Extension, not north.
So we will
not
still have a
96
little
west.
Well-
gap from, Carlisle, and I believe there's some area that's been extended a little bit to the west around the senior housing. So
okay.
there will still be a little bit of gap that you could
Got
work
you.
to fill.
Well, now, I think John said that, when I asked him that question, I think he said that could be done.
No, with Mac Hatcher, it's gonna connect all the trail systems.
Okay.
The Carlisle will connect into West Haven. They have to do the intersection. When they widen the intersection, they're gonna put the trail in with it, so there should be no gaps at the end of the project.
Great,
Okay.
great.
Good answer.
Yes,
Even down Highway 96, yes. It'll connect to, basically, the limits go to the Carlisle Lane intersection improvements, where we terminated the trail system and the curb and gutter tapers down is where Mac Hatcher connects.
And then on Hillsborough Road, it's gonna go to Fieldstone, right?
No, not on Hillsborough Road.
But that was,
You do have bike lanes on Hillsborough
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
north of
That's
that,
right.
and you've got
That's true.
the sidewalk issue we talked about before
own a
will be
bike. That will
addressed.
be correct.
too. And you have bike lanes in Hillsborough. Road.
a bike.
Yes.
Not yet.
But one question, but Paul, there's not a sidewalk east of Hillsborough Road going east on Mac Hatcher.
No,
Right,
and
that's
that's
right.
something that we have in our,
So the question was, so the question was, will that connect all the multi-use trails? I consider the multi-use
Existing,
trail to
yeah.
be the one that goes from
Okay.
Murfreesboro Road over to wherever, Franklin Road, wherever it goes to. But from Franklin Road over to Hillsborough Road,
there will be a gap there. Our
There is a
plan
gap.
is to pursue federal funding to try to fill that
Fill
gap
that gap in?
long-term and
Okay.
get that multi-use trail connected.
Are you gonna make it curb and gutter then and cut the speed limit down?
It'd be extremely expensive, so we'd probably not pursue that option, but that would be up to the board.
One thing at a time.
what are you talking about?
This is there will still be one gap from Hillsborough Road over to Franklin Road within around
Oh, yeah,
Mac
I'm
Hatcher.
not talking
Because
about
that was
that.
the only
Existing
original
section.
four
You've got
lane.
some
That was
by
the only
the-
original four
Some by the
lane.
church.
Mhm.
Yeah, you got some by the
Yeah.
church. In terms of trail connection, there's some right in that area.
Mhm.
So you've got a little bit of that, but we've still got a gap in that area to look at, and that's what Paul's talking
On Mac
about.
Hatcher?
On Mac Hatcher.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's not what,
On
yeah.
existing Mac Hatcher.
Okay, item 10, resolution 2017-87, resolution to accept and recommend approval of amendment 1 to the 2016 Comprehensive Transportation Network Plan to the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission.
The purpose of this is basically to adopt Carruthers, Old South Carruthers essentially, as a collector roadway, and then also to adopt a signal master plan, which will help make it more predictable as to where traffic signals are. And the policy that have been adopting is signals shown in that master plan would then qualify for impact fee offsets as it relates to arterial collector roads. And that helps share the costs associated with this. And an example of where we've run into problems in the past is Artesa, where the last developer in had to pay for it. And so this really sets
They
out
didn't though.
the traffic signals that we would be willing to contribute arterial and collector funding to.
I know what you're talking about, but they did not have to.
They did not have to, no, the
You-
board
you-
ultimately.
you
That's
put
right,
some
because
impact
the
fees and
board
money,
voted
yes.
not
Yes, you did.
not to make them do it, yeah.
Yes.
But
was
I
that
know what you're talking
unanimous
about.
vote at the time?
That makes sense.
I don't remember the vote.
Yeah.
I know what we were
No, it
directed to
wasn't.
do.
I didn't have to break a tie, so I don't remember. So item 11 is, 11 and 12 have to do with, I'll just read 11. Established for a term of award of a list of qualified, responsive, and responsible service providers who agree to provide the city on a rotating basis professional services pertaining to title searches and reports for the city's voluntary purchase of real estate or its acquisition by eminent domain. And 12,
It's for closing.
Title
It's for
searches
the
and real
closing.
estate closings.
thank you for,
Sounds good.
any questions about those?
Who
Okay.
does those now?
We have a list of about eight or so, and we just rotate through them. Sometimes if we have a big batch, we'll send the whole batch to one person. But if we're in a hurry, sometimes we'll separate the batch and send it to all of them. It just depends. But we have about 8 right now.
This refreshes the list, essentially.
It does. It refreshes the list, and then as we are doing condemnations for like a Matt Hatcher or Hillsborough, which took a long time, we use title companies quite frequently.
So will it change the list, or?
Yeah, it does change the list. There are a few people who did not want to be back on it because we do set the rate at a certain amount. I think right now it's 300 per title search, which is still probably below market, but we're promising them work. So it's kind of a give and take.
Yeah. 13, we're going to defer.
No, 13's okay to move forward
Oh,
with.
13.
14 we want to defer.
Okay, 14 defer. 13 is a procurement award to Swift Lawn and Land, Inc. of Franklin, estimated amount of $26,133 per year for a term of award for city facility landscaping and related contract services for a term of award for the Facilities Department, purchasing office solicitation number 2018-008, $32,000 budgeted.
So this is for our facilities, and so it's a bid award there. Item 14 that we're asking to be deferred, I'll just give you a quick reason why and what we're working on. One of the things we're seeing is a real difficulty in getting part-time and seasonal workers. And that affects our ability to do all the mowing we need to do in the parks. So we want a little more time to look at how we compose a mix of staffing versus contractual services. We could probably accommodate anything in this year's budget, but we're also trying to be mindful of what it commits us to in next year's budget. So we're doing a little more work, Mark working with Parks and looking at what that means budgetarily and service delivery wise. So we want a little more time to look at that, and we'll come forward with something. We're not sure what scale it'll be compared to what's been bid. Yes, yeah.
See you at 7. We're adjourned.